An extract from David Clarke's book, The Fall, Desperation and Recovery, Chapter 12, How My Life Was Affected. Soon after this time, I began to experience suicidal thoughts.
She was a beautiful girl, that's why it never worked. She had me suicidal, when she closed the door. Damn all these beautiful...
All relating to the troubles of our marriage and the fear of my wife leaving me. It was at that time one of the elders of the church I was attending prayed with me and for me. His name was Peter Jacob, after which I then began to get better. The black dogs of depression left me for a while. I had learned to respect medical opinion, and it was now my intention to maintain the stability that I gained by continuing the medication prescribed by my doctor, which is the prescribed treatment for manic depression or bipolar mood swings. It was a bit like Oliver Cromwell, who gave advice to his troops before they went into battle. He said, "Trust in God, but keep your powder dry." I gave advice to myself, and so with me, I called upon the Lord and kept on with the lithium. The ups and downs of our new relationship in the marriage brought with it the highs and lows of emotion. Van Gogh once said that emotions were the captains of our lives. I was certainly driven by powerful emotion at this time. I was responsible during all this time to have my blood levels checked and to take my medication. This I did as regular as clockwork and kept in touch with Dr. Walmsley, who, by the way, wrote a foreword to my book Converted on LSD Trip, even when I was signed off as needing care. This was because I was aware of my reality and fear of depression, and that God uses means for medical treatment. After this meeting at the church, which was the Warsash Jesus is Lord Church, I felt the desire to compose a new song. I wrote and composed a song in praise to God and to declare to others the deliverance I'd received, entitled Spirit of the Lord Come Down, and was able to sing it at the Warsash Church. This desire was an expression of thanks for the support I had received from God during my recent awful times, and to the fact that in 1970 I had been saved from a life of sin and drug taking and immoral living, and despite that, though I had fallen again into outward sins many years later, I had now been delivered yet again to follow Christ and leave a sinful way of life according to His grace and mercy. However, when Nurse Ratched heard my song, she expressed she was jealous, as it was not about her. I found this response incredible, and it portrayed to me she had deep-seated insecurities. Realising this was the case and wishing to assure her that she had no need to be jealous, I rewrote the song for her benefit. This new song was called Can You Remember?
Let me tell you now I love you, for I have no other way to share my loving feelings with you, my love, today.
Unfortunately, I was never able to sing this version of the song to her since our separation in November 1998. But that did not stop my plan to sing this love song to her the next year. Not only did I rewrite the song, but I also practiced many times and sung at various venues after our separation. Finally, I decided it should be recorded and be released as a single, as I tell in the next chapter. Chapter 12 continued, or as I say, rock and real music. Rock music, a cure or cause of manic highs and lows. I found that making music helped relieve my stress and fears, and so I decided to record and release a single that I had written for Nurse Ratched. I had practiced this song on my guitar and sung it at home for weeks, and then one night, when listening to a group called The Shack at Murphy's Bar in Southampton, I asked if I could play and sing the song at their gig, informing them that I was Dave Clarke from the 60s. The song went down well, and as a result, it was agreed that I should perform again at the Wyvern pub at Leon Solent. Here's the news article about the event. Portsmouth News. Music. Lecturer plans to release self-penned single, 19th of December 1999. Electronics teacher has sparkling interest in pop, by Richard Hargreaves. The news. He almost shares the same name as the 1960s pop legend, and Fareham College lecturer hopes to follow him to the charts. By day, the 50-year-old teaches electronics, but hopes that he will take a back seat in the year 2000 as he prepares his release single. When the song came to his head, the guitarist decided it was too good to be forgotten about and felt it just had to be recorded. Dave of Hailing Close turned a pub into a recording studio as he set down the disc Can You Remember, a song he believes is a surefire hit. After toying with the idea of sending the song to Paul McCartney, he decided to record it himself with 4 friends and students from Fareham College in 1999, the Dave Clark 5. The Wyvern pub at Leon Solent provided the setting, and its regulars, the audience, as Can You Remember was captured for the first time at the local duo shack. I believe it's a good song and worth recording, said Dave. I wrote the song for my wife. Everybody I know and I've played it to thinks it's a real good song. It has gone down well. Dave of Hailing Close Fareham followed the shack around for the past couple of months, bringing an entourage with him, and sometimes joins the band. And his name has led to a few people think he's the real Dave Clark, whose band, the Dave Clark 5, had its hits more than 30 years ago with songs like Bits and Pieces and Catch Us If You Can. Because it's been so long since the band was around, you can get away with it, Dave added. The true 1960 pop star didn't have an E on the end of his surname, and according to the shack, probably a little bit more tuneful. But they were impressed at the lecturer's charismatic stage performance whipping up the crowd. For the lead singer, Ian Hamilton, Friday's recording was the first live performance he sung. He, Dave and friends have practiced for weeks. It's a very catchy song, and I like to think it will be successful. Recording it is a bit of a step, but Dave is always going on about Dave Clark and added, to keep up with the pop star image, Dave arrived at the Common Bar Lane pub last night's event in a limousine. Postscript, it was a hearse, accompanied by screaming groupies who were students from Fareham College. Dave now hopes to tweak the master copy of the recording into something which could be released shortly as a single, although he says the song is a one-off but not a career move. I later sang this song at the Beat the Band competition in Oliver's Bar and at the Contented Pig in Portsmouth, and finally entered the song into X Factor. One day I'm sure it will be a hit. After this event, I took Ellie, my daughter, and her friends home. I was dressed in my petty officer's naval officer's uniform. When we reached Stubbington, my daughter Eleanor was feeling ill and wanted me to stop. So we did, only to attract attention by a police car that was following us. Sure enough, I was questioned and breathalyzed, and as a result was taken to the police station in a police vehicle in order to be checked out. When I arrived at the police station, there was Alan and others who too had been picked up on suspicion of drinking offences. The police assumed I was a naval officer and suggested I wait at the end of the line to be tested for excessive alcohol in my blood, and by the time I was checked, I was okay and allowed to go. I'm sure the police did that out of respect for the fact that I was a naval officer. I was alone that Christmas, 1999, but that didn't deter me, and I decided to invite my children's headmistress, Miss Bullhead of Henry Court School, to our Christmas celebration at the church in Farlington. So I killed 2 birds with 1 stone, so to speak. I designed a Christmas card with pictures of all my children on the front cover and sent it to her. I simply wrote, "We wish you all a meaningful Christmas and a new birth for the new year." St. John 3 verse 5 to 7. Dave Clark, children and friends are inviting you to our Christmas celebration at the Hilton International Hotel in Farlington. And there's a picture of Mum, Dad and the children, Isaac, Esther, David and Eleanor, and Rebecca too. Needless to say, when my children found out that I'd written like this to their headmistress, they were so embarrassed and haven't got over it to this day. Anyway, Miss Bullhead was rather pleased to receive the card and wrote to me to thank me for the invite, so it couldn't have been that bad, could it? Anyway, Rupert Bear helped David's dream come true. During this time of making music, my mind was very active and learning new things. I just learned how to scan colour pictures into a computer and print in colour. So, armed with this skill, I put together a storybook using Rupert Bear cartoons to illustrate and express my wish and desire to sing my song to Silver Girl at Christmas Day. I put this song together and sent it along with the music CD to my 3-year-old daughter Rebecca for that Christmas of 2000. It took me a year, however, to devise a means of getting Silver Girl to hear the song. This is what I did. I wrote a story using Rupert Bear pictures to form a book, which tells of how Rupert Bear helped David to form a band and to sing his song. Example, there's the picture. Rupert is a lovely bear, he's always kind and always fair. When David was a little boy, he told his dream to Rupert Bear. The whole story tells how Rupert Bear got together students from David's classes at Fareham College to form a band. The song was sung and recorded on a CD and sent to his daughter along with the story to be read and heard on Christmas Day, the year 2000. Following this event, I took interest in my students' activities. They had formed a rock band called Desperate Measures and wanted help to promote themselves and getting bookings for their musical gigs. They were very happy for me to manage them and to do all the promotions. I'm sure this new interest was driven as a result of a reaction to the problems I was facing in my marriage. And as a result, I created a series of deliberate high moods in my fight against depression. I came up with the idea of creating publicity for the band. One member of the band was to live in a coffin for a week and let people know all about it, and be carried each day to the various eating places in Fareham to be fed free meals for 7 days. They would also enter the Beat the Band competition held at Oliver's Bar in Gosport in May the 5th, 2000. It was agreed, and I began to make the necessary arrangements and entered the band for the competition. I built the coffin at Fareham College and painted it black, wrote on the side the advertised event. Then drove around Fareham and districts with the coffin tied to the roof of my yellow Fiesta car. However, news of this event brought so much publicity that the member of the band, Mark Rogers, who was to sleep in the coffin, had second thoughts about being involved. He bottled out, saying he might lose his job seeker's allowance and housing benefit was stopped if he was not available for work. So the band cancelled the planned event. My response to this was to recruit others to form the band. So I took the coffin to Fareham College, stood it in the main hall at the beginning of the day and stopped the first likely looking lad to pose in the coffin. It turned out he was a guitar player called Gavin from Portchester. He was chosen to play the lead in our new band, Dave Clark and the Resurrection from the 60s. Here's Dave Clark in the coffin, and there's Mick Fisher, the bass guitarist in the band. I eventually got permission for the principal to put the coffin in the hall, but then he had second thoughts and asked me not to do it. However, it was too late. The photograph had already been taken, and as you can see, as though it was made for Gavin. I formed the band with Gavin, Maurice Govern, Mike Fisher, Vince from Gosport and me singing. It was during this time that Mark Rogers, the main man in the band, who had to sleep in the coffin for the week, was working at my home at 11 Hayling Close. It was a night that I was off to recruit Ciroc dancers for the musical event at Gosport. I was now at Basingstoke, some 30 miles away from my home. Then I got a call to say my house was on fire. I asked Mark, was everyone safe? and was told yes, and the fire brigade and the police were called. I was told David and Ellie had escaped, but apart from the kitchen being burnt out, they were all okay. Here is the news article. Blaze may have been avoided if batteries had been fitted to the detector's fire alarm. Here's a picture of Mark with the battery missing. I realised there was nothing to gain by rushing home because all was in control, so I stayed the rest of the evening and asked the Sarok dancers to see if they could dance Sarok to my music Can You Remember in the Streets at Gosport, which I had recorded on my Sony mini disc recorder. During the run up to the week of the performance, Esther, my eldest daughter, wanted to borrow the Fiesta, and I agreed, providing she drove it with the coffin on the roof. I'm not sure, as I can't remember, if she did drive the car, but the following day the coffin had been stolen. So I reported the matter to the police. Of course, the matter was reported in the newspapers, and here is the news article. So not to be deterred, it was some days after the coffin had been recovered and were back in business, so to speak. Here's the news report of the finding of the coffin. Not to be deterred, I recruited another student from Fareham College to live in the coffin, and he was to be carried by student friends and fellow musicians to Wetherspoons, McDonald's, Burger King, Edwin's and the Oaston Square to be fed as planned. It was also decided we should put forward another band to replace Desperate Measures by Dave Clark from the 60s and the Resurrection. So here we have it. Here's the news article. The band was formed and we performed as planned, singing the song Rebecca's Field, My Resurrection and Can You Remember. It was a crazy night and the bar was packed, and during that last song, one of my son's friend, Morgan, a BMXer from Portsmouth, poured lighter fuel on my trousers and caught light to me. Fortunately, the fire was put out with a pint of beer. Needless to say, we did not win, as we were probably the worst band at the event, but not the dullest. For pouring lighter fuel on me in the pub, I had caned Morgan for his actions. So here's Morgan being caned. We let him off lightly, for he did turn up with his BMX bike, as I'd asked him to do, and tow the coffin down the street to Oliver's Bar using his BMX bike, along with his friends from the skate park in Portsmouth. Another musical event we played at the Air Balloon in Portsmouth. This time, Mike Fisher and his band called Zoo played. And we did what was known as an installation. There, Mike Fisher on bass, Dave White on keyboard. We were what you might call progressive musicians, getting away with old-fashioned ways of men and women relationships. We were modern men, where modern men no longer went to pubs on their own, but with the boys, leaving our wives alone at home doing housework. But we took our wives with us, so they could come as well, provided they did the ironing in the pub. To watch all those videos and stories spoken about in this video, go to the Clark Family Archive Internet Archive Library at www.archives.org/documents/@David Dolores.